The autumn rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Billionaire, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants, where a single reservation could cost more than most people earned in a month. The dining room glowed with amber light from crystal chandeliers, casting elegant shadows across tables draped in white linen. Outside, the streets of the Upper East Side glistened beneath street lamps, and the city's elite hurried past under designer umbrellas. Ezra Demir stood near the bar, a glass of 18-year-old scotch in his hand, surveying the room with the casual confidence of someone who owned it. At 42, he cut an imposing figure in his tailored ton suit, his dark hair swept back, a few distinguished gray streaks at his temples. His Turkish heritage showed in his sharp features and olive complexion, though he'd left Istanbul 20 years ago with nothing but ambition and a ruthless determination to succeed. Now, he was worth over $300 million, built from real estate investments and a chain of luxury hotels across 3 continents. Money had become so commonplace to him that he barely noticed it anymore, except as a tool to get what he wanted and a measure of his superiority over others. Mr. Demir, your table is ready, the maitre approached with a deferential bow. Ezra waved him off. Not yet. I am waiting for someone. His business partner, Marcus Chen, was late as usual. Ezra checked his Patek Philippe watch and frowned. He despised tardiness, considering it a sign of weakness and disrespect. His eyes wandered across the restaurant, taking in the wealthy patrons, the old money and new tech billionaires, all playing their parts in New York's endless theater of status and power. That's when he noticed her. She moved between tables with practiced efficiency, balancing a tray of drinks with steady hands. Unlike the other white staff in their crisp black uniforms, she seemed to fade into the background, invisible to the diners she served. She was young, probably late 20s, with auburn hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her face was striking in an understated way, the kind of beauty that didn't announce itself but revealed itself slowly. High cheekbones, full lips pressed in concentration, as the color of honey that remained carefully downcast as she worked. There was something about her posture, the way she carried herself, that caught his attention. Despite the humble uniform and subservient hall, there was a dignity in her movements, a quiet strength that seemed at odds with her station. Ezra felt the familiar stirring of interest, the same predatory instinct that had served him well in business. He enjoyed games, challenges, and this woman looked like she might provide some entertainment on an otherwise dull evening. As she passed near him, he stepped deliberately into her path. She stopped abruptly, nearly spilling the empty glasses on her tray. "Excuse me, sorry," she said softly, her voice carrying a slight accent. He called in to keep the place. "I didn't see you there." "No, I imagine you didn't." Ezra smiled, the expression not key to reaching his eyes. "You're new here, aren't you? I haven't seen you before." She met his gaze briefly, then looked away. "I've been here 3 months, so is there something I can get for you?" 3 months? He raised an eyebrow. "And I've never noticed you. That's quite an achievement in itself." "What is your name?" "Maya, so." She shifted the tray, clearly wanting to continue her work. "Maya." He tested the name on his tongue. "Just Maya. No last name." "Maya Flores, so. If you will excuse me, I have tables waiting." "Spanish?" he asked, ignoring her attempt to leave. "My mother was from Argentina, so." There was something in her tone, a barely perceptible edge that suggested she didn't appreciate being detained. Ezra found this amusing. Most people, especially those in service positions, went out of their way to please him, to laugh at his jokes and indulge his whims. This woman seemed merely patient, enduring his attention rather than welcoming it. "Argentina," he mused. "The land of tango, beef, and beautiful women." "Tell me, Maya from Argentina, do you dance?" Her honey-colored eyes flicked up to meet his, and for a moment, he saw something flash that, something sharp and knowing that disappeared so quickly he wondered if he'd imagined it. "I know how to dance, so yes." "Tango." She hesitated. "Yes." Ezra's smile widened. He glanced around the restaurant, noting that several nearby diners had turned their attention to the exchange, sensing entertainment. He'd had a few drinks, just enough to lower his inhibitions and raise his confidence, and an idea formed in his mind, bold and ridiculous and perfect. You'll tell you what, Maya, he said, his voice carrying across the quiet dining room. You'll make you a deal. If you dance one thing with me, right here, right now, and you can truly dance it, not just shuffle your feet but really dance with passion and skill, you'll marry you. The words hung in the air. Conversations around them died. Silverware stopped clinking. Every eye in Blasinoes turned toward them. Maya stared at him, her expression unreadable. I am sorry, but I am working. Oh, come now, Ezra laughed, aware of his audience and playing to it. Surely your manager would understand. How often does a poor waitress get a marriage proposal from someone like me? He gestured to himself with mock grandiosity. Ezra Demir, if you haven't heard of me, I am worth more than everyone in this room combined. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the crowd. Maya's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. That's very generous, sir, but I really must get back to work. Scared, Ezra challenged, his voice taking on a sharper edge. Or perhaps you lied about knowing how to dance. It's all right, I understand. People like you often exaggerate their abilities to seem more interesting. Something changed in Maya's face. The carefully neutral expression cracked just slightly, and beneath it, Ezra glimpsed something fierce and proud. He didn't tell you, she said quietly. Then prove it. He set down his squash and held out his hand. One dance. Unless you were afraid you can keep up. Ma looked at his outstretched hand, then at the crowd of wealthy diners watching with cruel amusement in their eyes, these people who saw her as nothing more than help, background noise in their important lives. She looked at Ezra as a smug face, his absolute certainty that she would either refuse and prove herself a liar or accept and humiliate herself trying to dance with someone so obviously above her station. She set down her tray on a nearby table. All right, Mr. Demir, she said, and her voice was steady, controlled. I accept your challenge. Ezra blinked, not expecting her to actually agree. For a moment, uncertainty flickered across his face, but he quickly recovered, gesturing to the restaurant manager who hovered anxiously nearby. You there, tell your pianist to play something appropriate. A tango, obviously. The manager looked flustered. So, we down to typical now. Ezra snapped. The nervous energy in the room intensified as the pianist, grateful for clear instructions, began to play a slow, sultry arrangement of Por una Cabeça, the famous tango that had been featured in countless films. The music swirled through the restaurant, sensual and dangerous. Ezra moved to the center of the dining room, pushing aside a table to create space. He held out his hand again, confident now, ready to either be impressed or more likely amused by this waitress's presumption. Maya stepped forward, and as she did, something remarkable happened. She seemed to grow taller, her posture changing from the hunched, apologetic stance of a service worker to something proud and commanding. She reached up and pulled the elastic from her hair, letting auburn waves fall around her shoulders. Then she walked toward Ezra with a fluid grace that made several people gasp quietly. She took his hand, and the moment they touched, Ezra felt a jolt of something he called into his name. Her hand was small but strong, her grip confident. They stood facing each other, and Maya placed her left hand on his shoulder while he instinctively moved his right hand to her back. The music swelled, dramatic and passionate, and they began to move. Within the first 3 steps, Ezra realized he'd made a terrible mistake. Maya didn't just know how to tango, she was extraordinary. She moved with a precision and fluidity that came from years of serious training, her body responding to his lead with perfect timing, while simultaneously challenging him, pushing him to be better, to match her intensity. Her legs executed sharp blows and ganjos that required incredible strength and control. When he attempted a sacada, a displacement step meant to show his dominance in the dance, she countered with such elegant resistance that he nearly stumbled. She was making him look inadequate, and she knew it. Ezra had taken tango lessons years ago, enough to get by at social events, but he'd never danced with anyone like this. Maya moved like she'd been born dancing, every step purposeful, every movement expressing something deep and complex: anger, pride, pain, defiance. Her face remained impassive, but her body told a story of barely contained emotion. The crowd watched in stunned silence as they moved across the improvised floor. Maya executed a complex series of steps that forced Ezra to follow her lead, reversing the traditional dynamic. She spun close to him, her face cintas from his, and he saw in her honey-colored eyes something that made his blood run cold. Contempt. She wasn't dancing with him. She was dancing at him, using the tango as a weapon, exposing every flaw in his technique, every moment of hesitation, every drop of his arrogance and false confidence. The music reached its crescendo, and Maya executed a finale, dramatic backbend that required Ezra to support her full weight. For a moment, suspended in his eyes, looked up at him with an expression of such fierce triumph that he felt something inside him crack. Then the music stopped. The restaurant erupted in applause, genuine and enthusiastic, the kind of response reserved for true artistry. People stood from their tables, clapping and shouting bravos. But the applause wasn't for Ezra. It was all for Maya. She straightened, released his hand and stepped back, her chest rising and falling with controlled breaths. Her face returned to the neutral, professional expression, but her eyes still blazed with that inner fire. Was that sufficient, Mr. Demir? She asked softly, though her voice carried in the sudden quiet after the applause. Ezra stood frozen, his mind reeling. He'd been publicly outmaneuvered, made to look foolish by a waitress in front of New York's elite. Rage and humiliation were hid inside him, but also something else, a grudging respect and a disturbing attraction that he called in to keep suppress. Before he could respond, Marcos appeared at the entrance, shaking rain from his umbrella. Ezra, sorry I'm late, traffic was murder. What did I miss? Ezra turned his eyes away from Maya, trying to regain his composure. Nothing important, he said, his voice rough. Just saw me entertainment. Maya picked up her tray from where she'd left it, her movements once again small and efficient, but transformation back to invisible waitress complete. But as she turned to leave, Ezra caught her arm. Wait, he said, lowering his voice so only she could hear. I meant what I said. The proposal. She looked down at his hand on her arm, then up at his face and smiled, a small, sad smile that didn't reach her eyes. No, you didn't, Mr. Demir. You meant to humiliate me, but I appreciate the gesture. She gently pulled her arm free and walked away, disappearing into the kitchen, leaving Ezra standing alone in the center of the restaurant, feeling for the first time in 20 years like he'd lost something important. The evening continued, but Ezra couldn't focus on his business dinner with Marcos. His mind kept returning to those moments on the makeshift dance floor, to the feel of Maya's hand in his, to the way she moved with such controlled fury. He found himself watching the kitchen door, hoping to catch another glimpse of her. You were distracted, Marcos observed, cutting into his $40 steak. What is going on? Nothing, Ezra lied. Just thinking about the Montreal property. But it wasn't true. He was thinking about Maya Flores, about where someone who danced like that was working as a waitress, about the story behind those sad, knowing eyes. And he was thinking, with growing certainty, that he needed to know more about her. Over the next 2 weeks, Ezra found himself returning to Blessingway's far more frequently than usual, always requesting tables in Maya's section when she was working. She served him with perfect professional courtesy, never mentioning their dance, never showing any sign that they shared that strange, charged moment. He learned small things about her through observation and carefully casual questions. She worked double shifts most days, arriving at 11 in the morning and leaving after midnight. She was polite to customers but maintained a careful distance, never engaging in personal conversations. The other white staff seemed to respect her but didn't know her well. She spoke fluent Spanish and English, and he once heard her conversing in Italian with an older couple. What he called in to learn, what frustrated him most, was why she was there. Someone with her education, evident from her vocabulary and bearing, and her extraordinary talent should have been doing something far more substantial than waiting tables. There was a mystery here, and Ezra Demir hated unsolved mysteries. On his 7th visit, he finally asked her directly. It was late, new closing time, and the restaurant was almost empty. Why are you working here, Maya? He asked as she refilled his water glass. She paused, considering whether to answer. Because I need money, Mr. Demir. That is generally why people work. Don't be obtuse. You know what I mean. Someone who dances like you clearly has education and refinement. What are you doing waiting tables? Surviving, she said simply. Will there be anything else? Have dinner with me, he said impulsively. Not here, somewhere else. Anywhere you want. No, thank you. Why not? She met his eyes directly for the first time since their dance. Because you were not interested in having dinner with me, Mr. Demir. You were interested in solving a puzzle, satisfying your curiosity. I am not a puzzle for you to solve. You were right, he admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. But I am also interested because the dance we shared, it was the most real thing I've experienced in years. Everything in my life was transactional, fake, people pretending to like me because of my money. But when we danced, you didn't pretend anything. You were completely, brutally honest. I want more of that. Maya's expression softened slightly, and for a moment, he thought she might agree. But then she shook her head. I can't give you what you were looking for. I am sorry. She walked away, and Ezra felt that strange sensation again, the feeling of losing something valuable. He didn't couldn't give up. Over the following month, he became a fixture at Blasinues, much to Marcus's amusement and his business associates' confusion. He sent flowers to the restaurant for Maya, expensive arrangements that she politely refused. He offered her money, not as an insult but as genuine help, which she rejected with quiet dignity. He tried charm, honesty, even vulnerability, sharing pieces of his past he rarely revealed to anyone. Nothing worked. Maya remained kind but distant, a wall between them that he called into breach. Then, on a cold December evening, everything changed. Ezra arrived at Blasinues to find the staff in an unusual state of agitation. Maya wasn't at her station, and when he asked about her, the manager pulled him aside nervously. Mr. Demir, I am afraid Maya won't be working tonight. There has been a situation. What kind of situation? The manager hesitated, clearly uncomfortable sharing employee information with a customer, even a wealthy regular. Her apartment building had a fire last night. No one was hurt, thankfully, but many units were damaged, including hers. She lost most of her belongings. She called this morning to say she needed a few days off to sort things out. Ezra felt something cold settle in his chest. Where is she staying? I don't know, so she didn't say. Give me her phone number, sir. I can release personal information about employees. Give me her number. Ezra repeated, his voice dropping to the dangerous tone that made business rivals back down. Or I'll buy this restaurant and fire you myself. 5 minutes later, he had Maya's number and address. The apartment building was in Queens, a modest four-story structure in a working-class neighborhood, nothing like the luxury high-rises Ezra was accustomed to. 5 trucks were still parked outside when he arrived, and the acrid smell of smoke hung heavy in the cold air. He found her sitting on the steps of the building across the street, wrapped in a thin coat, watching as firefighters carried out the last of their equipment. Her face was streaked with soot, her eyes red-rimmed, and she looked smaller somehow, younger and more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. Ezra approached slowly, unsure of his reception. Maya. She looked up, surprised. Mr. Demir, what are you doing here? I heard what happened. Are you all right? She laughed, a hollow sound without humor. I am fine. Everything I own is gone. I have nowhere to sleep tonight, and I just spent my last bit of savings on a storage unit for the few things I managed to salvage. But I am fine. Ezra sat down beside her on the cold steps, ignoring the stares of curious neighbors. Let me help you. No. Maya, be reasonable. I don't want your charity, Mr. Demir, she said, her voice tired but firm. I know how this works. You help me now, and then I am in your debt. Then you expect something in return. I've been down that road before, and I won't do it again. Before? Ezra frowned. What do you mean? She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the damaged building. Then, perhaps because she was exhausted, perhaps because she had nothing left to lose, she began to talk. My mother died when I was 16, Maya said, her voice distant. In Buenos Aires. She was a dancer, one of the best tango dancers in the city. She taught me everything I know. After she died, I had nothing, no other family, no money. I lived on the streets for a while, dancing in the tourist areas for tips. Ezra listened, not interrupting, barely breathing. A wealthy man sang dancing one day. He was American, a businessman who traveled frequently to Argentina. He told me I was too talented to waste my life on the streets. He offered to bring me to the United States, to pay for my education, to give me opportunities. I was 17, desperate, and stupid enough to believe him. Her hands clenched in their fists on her lap. He did bring me here, but the opportunities he offered came with conditions. He wanted me to be his kept woman, his pretty toy to show off and use whenever he pleased. When I refused, he made sure he called in to work anywhere legitimate. No papers, no visa, no way to prove I belonged here. I've been living in the shadows ever since, taking whatever jobs I could find, always afraid of being deported back to a country where I have nothing and no one. The story hit Ezra like a physical blow. He thought of all the times he'd flaunted his wealth in front of her, his casual cruelty in offering her money as if it could solve everything, his arrogant assumption that she would be grateful for his attention. The tango that night at the restaurant, he said slowly, understanding dawning. You went into just dancing. You were showing what you thought of men like me. Men like you, Maya repeated softly. Rich, powerful men who think they can buy anything, anyone. Who make promises they don't intend to keep just to see if they can win. Yes, I was showing you what I thought of that. Shame, an emotion Ezra rarely experienced, washed over him. I was an ass. Yes, you were. They sat in silence as darkness fell and the temperature dropped. Finally, Ezra spoke again. I can't change what happened to you. I can't undo the harm that men caused. But I can help you now. Only am asking you to let me, not because I expect anything in return, but because it's the right thing to do. Please. Maya turned to look at him, searching his face in the dim light from the street lamps. Whatever she saw there must have convinced her of his sincerity because she nodded slowly. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Ezra took her to one of his hotels, a luxury property in Midtown where he kept a suite for personal use. He arranged for clothes, food, and privacy, making sure that staff understood she was to be treated as a guest, not an obligation. Over the next few days, he helped her navigate the practical challenges of losing everything, replacing documents, filing insurance claims, finding a new place to live. But something else happened during those days, something neither of them expected. They talked, really talked, sharing stories and fears and dreams. Ezra found himself opening up in ways he never had before, telling Maya about his own past, the poverty he escaped in Turkey, the ruthless choices he made to build his empire, the loneliness that came with success. Maya, in turn, revealed more about herself, her mother's struggle as a single parent, the beauty and pain of Buenos Aires, her love of dance as both art and survival. She told him about the small dream she'd given up on, teaching dance, performing, feeling safe enough to put down roots somewhere. They discovered they were both fundamentally alone in the world, both survivors who'd learned to protect themselves by keeping others at a distance. And slowly, carefully, they began to lower those walls. 3 weeks after the fire, Maya moved into a new apartment, a modest place in Brooklyn that Ezra helped her furnish. She insisted on paying him back, and though he tried to refuse it, she was adamant, drawing up a formal loan agreement that made him smile despite himself. She returned to work at billionaire, but their relationship had changed. Ezra still came to the restaurant, but now they would talk during her breaks, sharing coffee in the kitchen away from prying eyes. He learned that she loved old movies, read voraciously, and had a wicked sense of humor that only emerged when she felt comfortable. She learned that beneath his arrogance, Ezra was deeply insecure, terrified of being seen as the poor Turkish boy he'd once been, using money and power as armor against the world. On a snowy January evening, 4 months after their famous dance, Ezra took Maya to a small tango club in the village, a place far from his usual haunts, filled with serious dancers and true enthusiasts rather than wealthy tourists. Will you dance with me? He asked, offering his hand. Maya smiled, a real smile that lit up your whole face. You way sure. I won't go easy on you this time either. I am counting on it. They danced, and it was different from that first team. There was no anger now, no point de prova. Instead, there was understanding, trust, and something deeper that neither of them was quite ready to name. They moved together as true partners, challenging and supporting each other in equal measure. When the music ended, Ezra kept holding her close. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. "That night at Blasinues, when I made that ridiculous proposal, I was joking. I was showing off, being cruel for entertainment. But I am not joking now. I've fallen in love with you. Completely, terrifyingly in love with you. My briefcard. Ezra, I am not asking you to marry me," he continued quickly. "Not yet. We barely know each other, really, and you have every reason not to trust men who make big promises. But I wanted you to know that I am serious about this, about us. For the first time in my life, I've found something more valuable than money or success. I've found someone who sees me as I really am and doesn't to run away." Tears gathered in Maya's rainy-colored eyes. You have no idea how long I've waited to hear someone say something like that and actually mean it. "I mean it," Ezra said fiercely. "I swear to you, I mean every word." She reached up and touched his face gently. "Then yes, I would very much like to see where this goes. But slowly, okay? We both have wounds that need time to heal." "Slowly," he agreed. "I can do slowly." Over the following months, they built something neither had thought possible, a real relationship based on honesty, respect, and genuine affection. Maya eventually quit her job at Blasinues, not because Ezra asked her to, but because he helped her get her immigration status resolved through proper legal channels, finally giving her the freedom to pursue her dreams. She started teaching tango at a small studio in Brooklyn, building a reputation as a demanding but brilliant instructor. Ezra would sometimes come to watch her classes, amazed by her patience with beginners, her ability to draw out the passion and artistry in her students. They didn't rush into marriage. There was no need. They had time, finally, to simply be together without pretense or pressure. But on a warm evening in late spring, almost a year after their first dance, Ezra took Maya back to Blasinues. The restaurant was closed for a private event, or so the sign said. When Maya walked in, confused, she found the dining room transformed. Candles covered every surface, and roses, real roses, not the expensive arrangements he'd sent before, but simple, beautiful flowers, filled the space with their scent. The pianist was there, the same one who'd played for their first dance, and in the center of the room, Ezra stood waiting, dressed in a simple black suit, holding a single red rose. "I owe you a proper proposal," he said as she approached. One that isn't a joke or test or anything other than the absolute truth. He took her hands in his. "Maya Flores, you've made me a better man. You've taught me that real wealth isn't measured in dollars but in moments of genuine connection. You've shown me that strength comes not from power over others but from the courage to be vulnerable. I love you more than I knew it was possible to love anyone. Will you marry me?" Maya laughed and cried at the same time, overwhelmed by the sincerity in his eyes, the trembling in his hands that showed how nervous he truly was. "Yes," she said. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They married 3 months later in a small ceremony with just a handful of close friends. There was no extravagant display, no press coverage, no spectacle. Just two people who they found each other against all odds, promising to face whatever came next together. The reception was held at that same tango club in the village where they did dance the night Ezra confessed his love. As their first dance as husband and wife began, Ma looked up at her new husband with eyes full of joy and mischief. "You know," she said as they moved to the music, "I was really hoping you'd have followed through on that proposal you made at Blasinues. It would have been quite a story." Ezra laughed, pulling her closer. "Oh, I followed through, just took me a while to realize you weren't joking after all." "No," Maya said softly, "you weren't. You just needed time to understand what you were really asking for." "And what was that?" "Not a trophy or conquest," she replied, "but a partner. Someone who would dance through life with you, through all the difficult steps and beautiful moments, with honesty and trust and love." "Then I got exactly what I asked for," Ezra said, even if I was too stupid to know it at the time. They danced, surrounded by people who genuinely cared for them, and for the first time in both their lives, they felt completely at home, not in a country or a building, but in each other's arms, moving together to music only they could fully hear, a rhythm of two broken people who they found a way to make each other whole. Years later, when Ezra would tell the story of how they met, he always ended it the same way. I offered her marriage as a joke, and she accepted it as a challenge. She won, obviously. She always wins. And Evie never been happier to lose. Maya would roll her eyes and add her own version. He was an arrogant fool who needed to be taken down a peg. Lucky for him, he impatient with slow learners. But beneath the teasing was a truth they both understood. Sometimes the most meaningful connections come from the most unlikely places. Sometimes a moment of cruelty can transform into unexpected grace. And sometimes, when two people are brave enough to be honest with each other, even the worst beginning can lead to the most beautiful ending. The tango that had started as a weapon became their language of love, a way to communicate when words failed, to connect when life grew difficult. They danced in their living room on quiet evenings, at charity events, and in the same restaurant where it all began, now under new ownership but still holding their memories. And every time they danced, Maya would remember the fury she felt that first night, the desire to put an arrogant wishman in his place. And Ezra would remember the moment he realized he'd met someone extraordinary, someone who refused to be diminished by his wealth or intimidated by his power. They'd both been lost before they found each other, wandering through lives that looked successful on the surface but felt empty at the core. The tango had brought them together, but it was their choice to stay, to work through the difficult parts, to build something real from an encounter that could have been just another forgettable moment in a crowded restaurant. In the end, Ezra did marry the poor waitress who danced the tango, but she was never really poor, not in any way that mattered. She was rich in talent, in strength, in dignity, in all the things money couldn't buy, and she made him wealthy too, not in dollars but in love, in purpose, in the kind of happiness he spent his whole life chasing without even knowing what he was looking for. Their story became legend in certain circles, told and retold with various embellishments. Some versions made Ezra more heroic, others painted Maya as a modern-day Cinderella, but the truth was simpler and more profound than any fairy tale. Two broken people had collided at exactly the right moment, in exactly the right way, and had chosen to heal each other instead of walking away. The choice, renewed every day through small acts of kindness, patience, and love, was the real magic. Not the dramatic proposal or the passionate dance or the rags to riches transformation, but the quiet decision to keep showing up for each other, to keep being honest, to keep dancing even when the music was hard to hear. And so they live, not happily ever after in some perfect and complicated way, but happily despite the complications, finding joy in the struggle, finding beauty in the imperfections, finding home in each other's arms as they moved through life as the endless tango, sometimes leading, sometimes following, but always, always together.